Orangebloods YouTube on a Monday. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson. If you're new to the channel, you're checking us out for the first time, please do us a little favor, do us a solid. If you like us, I mean, I don't want to blackmail you or anything, but click on the subscribe button. We would love you to join our little Orangebloods YouTube family. Maybe hit the like button if you dig the video. Our big discussion point today, I'm Geoff Ketchum, Anwar Richardson joining me as always. I can't even remember. It was like 20 seconds ago whether or not I even said our names. We're talking NFL draft weekend. We're talking Texas in the draft weekend. And Anwar, I'll just throw it to you first. Your big takeaways now that the draft's a little bit in the rearview mirror and the buzz from night one went away, and then the meat and potatoes of 5 guys getting drafted from Texas on days 2 and 3. Do you have a big hot take on a Monday?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of takes. Like, first of all, the best take, obviously, Ketch, is kudos to you and I. We actually called it last week when we said, where do we think Sam Ehlinger is going to be drafted? And we both, you asked me, I went 6th round. You said exactly, you agreed, the same thing. And lo and behold, it was the 6th round. I mean, it's like walk off. We should do this all the time. Look how easy this is, right? And then after that, though, I mean, the biggest take is that Catch. I mean, 5 Longhorn players were drafted. I know we're focusing a little bit more on the first round stuff and what needs to happen there because it's been since 2015 since that's occurred. But to be able to walk away and say, hey, you had 5 players drafted, to be able to walk away and say, hey, you had the most players of anyone in the state, to be able to say you tied Oklahoma off a team that we thought was okay, you know, all right, but be able to do that. I think that's something that Texas fans look, again, you know, it's about Big 12 championships, right? And it's about the overall pictures. But if you talk about feeling good about yourself in early May, being able to say, hey, 5 of your guys got drafted, I think it's something Texas fans should be happy about.
Well, and I think it reflects that the program, you know, Tom, I keep saying this. I feel like we've done a bunch of videos and there's always Tom Herman didn't leave behind a disaster. I mean, if you have a team that finishes 19th, 20th in the country, it wins its bowl game, it finishes with what, in the end, a 700 winning percentage, right? Is it my
7-3. 7-3.
So, you know, at that point, you're probably putting 5 guys into the NFL draft. That's what it looks like when you have those types of seasons. And I think that those types of seasons, one of the big problems that Texas keeps having is that hasn't been their basement. That's been the ceiling. And that's been the ceiling. I mean, it doesn't get anything really better than that. And I know people want to say that the NFL, a lot of Texas fans want to say that producing NFL talent doesn't necessarily, that the draft is not some strong correlation to having success at college football. Well, maybe not if you're Boise State and you're playing in a conference that you can just run roughshod in. But in big boy college football, it is. And Texas had a pretty decent weekend, and it comes on the heels of ultimately what was a pretty decent season. Nobody, I think, would describe 5 guys being drafted better than that, and I don't think very many people would describe the season better than that. They weirdly paralleled each other, and here's a huge, massive headline. If and when Texas takes the next step and they're winning a conference championship and they're competing to get into the playoff, they will have first-round picks, and that number will stay at 5 or grow.
Yeah, I mean, and so, you know, now clearly we know, Catch, that's going to take some time before they get there, right? To get to that point, because, you know, we've had this conversation, you know, recently, and we looked at 2022, we don't really see a first rounder on this current roster. And the best that we're talking about, and we see guys who get drafted, don't get us wrong. We think Deshaun Jameson has got, you know, a lot of talent. Who's some of the guys that we were? Demarion Overshown has some talent.
I think DeAndre Coburn is the guy that I think has second day potential right now. Like, there's such a value put on D lineman. We know he's really good. I don't know if he's great. You know, I don't know if he takes that next step where he's Joseph Ossai or Sam Cosmi, but I think he's a tier behind that right now. But yeah, I mean, Texas, the saving grace for this season would be future first round picks reveal themselves. So we walk out of here going, oh, Bijan, he's going to get drafted. And this guy's going to get drafted, and kind of go down the list on both sides of the ball. That's just really hard to do right now. It is one of the reasons why this season has some limitations to it, unless some of these guys who may not yet be draft eligible start playing like they are.
Yeah. And so, and again, so now it's the task of what's going forward is, hey, now that being said, like, all right, what you have, can you make that higher and take those guys up to the next level? And then what you bring in as a staff standpoint, can you then develop them into first round picks? Again, it's great to look at Alabama and what they were able to do and the success that they're able to have. But the thing that I say that I caution Texas fans is Nick Saban's been doing that long before Steve Sarkisian got there. So we know Alabama's just a machine. Like, that's what they do. So we understand that. Now, can you come here and do that on this side of the tracks, where it's going to be a little bit more complicated, where you're having to compete against the Alabamas and the Ohio States and the Clemsons of the world? Like, those are the programs that dominate the draft right now. Those are the programs that are recruiting on a high level. You could probably break it down, the level that they're recruiting on. It just, no one else compares to it as far as being able to recruit and develop talent. And so for the Texas standpoint, from just a draft standpoint, going back to those days, Ketch, if you guys have talked about it, going back to the days where it's first round. Where in the first round are they going? They're going to go 4, they're going to go 7, they're going to go 10. Like, where in the first round are they going? As opposed to, man, it's been about 8 years since that one has happened, right? I mean, those are the kind of stats that, the same stuff, and I said it before, the same stuff that Sarkisian used when he was at Alabama to go ahead and get Texas kids. That's the thing he's going to have to counter, because he knows that's being used against him now that he's here in Texas.
I've got a hot take for you.
Hit me.
Sam Ehlinger could not, I mean this too, could not have landed in a better situation for him as it relates to his NFL future. Now, he could have gone higher in the draft, and we'd all be much happier with him. It would have been cool to see him in the 5th round or the 4th round or the 3rd round or whatever. But if I told you in December or January when he was making this decision, forget about where he gets drafted, where does he end up? And if I say drafted by the Colts in a position where he battles Jacob Eason, who was a 4th round pick a year ago, for the backup job to Carson Wentz, and those are his hurdles. I think if you forget about where he gets drafted, because he could have gone in the 4th round and that truth would still be there. He would have to beat out Eason. His roadblock to potentially a 10-year career in the NFL is making the league in year 1 and then getting your feet in so that you can stay in. Jacob Eason feels like about as easy of a mark as a 6th round quarterback could walk into, because he could legitimately win the job. And I don't know that there are many situations that he could have walked into where we'd look at the depth chart and say, yeah, no, if he does enough, he could be the number 2 there. And that would be incredible, let alone being in a situation where you kind of look at Carson Wentz and go, whoever the backup for the Colts is this year may have to play. So, I feel like there are 32 situations that Sam Ehlinger could be situated in going into the NFL. Maybe there's a better one. I've had a hard time this morning when thinking about it, trying to think of it. I can think of a lot of situations where it would have been harder. This one, they went with Jacob Eason a year ago. He just has to beat out Jacob Eason, who, granted, has a year advantage on him, but hasn't or wasn't in a position that he could separate himself in a way that maybe a Garrett Gilbert would if he'd gone to Dallas And then you're talking about a situation where if the Cowboys bring back Gilbert, it's like, well, we saw that guy play pretty good in an NFL game. We know what he is. We don't want to take a risk. I don't think Sam's in that position. Now it's about going to camp and really having a good camp. And if he can do that, I think he's got a position to create a place for himself that I really believe very few NFL teams could have offered going into this process.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though, Ketch, and this is where if you're a Sam Ehlinger fan and you're Sam Ehlinger, you should be encouraged. Teams don't really go back-to-back quarterbacks unless they feel like what they had may not be all that. Like, these draft picks are way too valuable for you to go get Easton last year, what was it, the 4th round, and then turn around and get Sam. That means they've seen Easton. They're like, we're using another draft pick on another quarterback. That means they're not 100% sold on him. That's what that means. Because if they were sold on him, Easton is clearly number 2, and they're just rolling with that point. So the window is open there for Sam. It's clearly, and look at this, he's the new guy. And so the new car is always going to be shiny. You know, the new car is always going to be it's going to have that new car smell. And that's what he's going to have when he walks into the building. Now, the other thing that's going to work to Sam's advantage is, and look, all quarterbacks are smart, but we know Sam is very smart. We heard he wowed during the interviews. Like, we heard people were incredibly impressed when they spoke to him. I mean, this guy is again, I've said it before, he went to Westlake. He went to study under Todd Dodge. This guy is a knowledgeable quarterback. So he gets to go to a program that, hey, if he goes, now the big thing for him, now the challenge is going to be, all right, Sam, some of those passes that you float in there, that's intercepted in the NFL. That's a pick 6 in the NFL. Like, you're not going to survive long without being accurate. So, that's going to be the big thing for Sam is, can he show accuracy? Once he gets there, especially in the summer, training camp is going to be important, and then those preseason games. Like, if he can show that accuracy, and if he could be kind of like that Sam Ehlinger that we saw in 2018, where we know he went 10 games without an interception. So there was some accuracy. So we know it's in there. And there's a coach that says, we can bring that out of him. Then, yeah, she's got a very good shot to make the 53-man. But the other thing too, Catch, when it comes to quarterbacks, and it gets a little bit dicey, teams are always a little bit nervous to put quarterbacks on the waiver wire and try to pick them up later on the practice squad, because they're always a little nervous that someone else will snag them up. And so if they put a quarterback on the waiver wire, it's because they're like, this person really, really needs development. But if it's iffy and they feel like he can make the team or he could contribute to the team, they don't put a quarterback on the waiver wire unless they absolutely have to.
Yeah, I think that if it's me and I'm the Colts, I want to have a more experienced backup. And I wouldn't be shocked if, when we get into camp, before they get to the start of the season, and, some of the stuff, the roster clutter that still kind of exists at the underbelly in those 35 through 53 man roster spots, you got a lot of guys who are waiting to see what happened with the draft. What are the best situations? You get some backup quarterbacks who wait to see what the market looks like before they. So I think the Colts could probably be in the market for a backup quarterback, because I don't know how you go in with Carson Wentz as your starter and think today we're good with Eason and Ehlinger.
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Yeah. Yes.
But if you're keeping Eason and you've used a 4th round pick, you probably hold off on doing that. If you get to training camp and Ehlinger's outperforming Eason, I think a backup quarterback being brought in is a death blow for Eason. And I think that potential, at least for making the 53, I think you could see them, 4th round pick, they still have some financial investment there and some commitment, but you were spot on with regards to what every quarterback drafted in the NFL. There's a story there. What is this pick meant to be? And taking a 6th rounder after you used a 4th on Eason is not a show of confidence in Eason. Doesn't mean they hate him, but it could be they want to light a fire under him. It may be they feel he needs competition. It may be that like he hasn't done enough yet. And Ehlinger, if he can take the job, he can take the job. I think Sam is in a really good position. At worst, he, I think, makes a practice squad in Indianapolis. He'd have to have a really bad like training camp. And then this is expected to be a normal training camp. That helps.
Yes.
Sam's going to get like 4 games. And I think that, first of all, it'll be fun this year to watch. I'm looking forward to watching Sam in the preseason. And weirdly enough, you know, preseason games are often like fire drills because there's so many guys. Sam's used to that.
You say he's plays it to his strengths.
Yeah, man. When like he's better when
I'm trying to light in here, by the way. Go ahead.
Right. You're talking like a hurry up offense. You're talking about guys coming in on multiple downs. Yeah, I was just saying, Anwar, he's used to having 3 or 4 receivers swap out on any given play. He's used to that. I think training camp football will suit Sam for a lot of weird, neurotic little reasons. But I could see him being a guy that opens some eyes in 3rd and 4th quarters of games that he plays. And I don't know. It'll be interesting. But the more and more I looked at his situation in Indianapolis, the more and more it became easy to see, okay, that's a really good spot for him. I mean, I would say that almost about any quarterback that was drafted this weekend, hey man, just go beat out Jacob Eason. They literally just drafted you because he did so little last year that they were like, we got to get a quarterback again. Because as a fan of the Cowboys, if the Cowboys spend a piece of 4th round like draft piece stock on a quarterback, they give that dude every chance a lot of times. That's pretty valuable if they were to take a quarterback in the 5th or 6th round in the very following draft. It's a big sign that they aren't really happy with the guy they selected. You wouldn't do that if you didn't feel like you needed to. So I'd be saying this about Sam. I'd be saying this about Kellen Mond. You name a quarterback that gets drafted after the 1st round, and I would say great situation to be in. I mean, there's absolutely no benefit of the doubt that you can give that Carson Wentz can last 16 games. So soft competition for the backup job and potentially in a place where you get your butt on the field and like get a chance to show some people some stuff. And maybe you fail, but at least you're not in a position where you never had a chance. It feels like the Colts backup quarterback job is a Willy Wonka golden ticket of a chance if you're the quarterback that can win a Jacob Eason, Sam Ehlinger battle.
Yeah, and also looks like they have a guy on their roster by the name of Jalen Morton. Did you cover him? He was out of Arlington High School. He was undrafted, but you know he was on. Looks like he was on the roster last year. But you know, the draft versus undrafted, as you know, Ketch. I mean, there's a hierarchy. There's a pecking order there. So he was looks like he probably did some practice squad stuff last year. So
when he's got to beat that guy out to make the practice squad.
Yes. So that might be his big battle, is beating out the guy Jalen who went to Prairie View A&M, but 6'4", about 6'4", 226 though. Went to how do I pronounce this in Arlington? Is it's Seguin High School? Am I saying that correctly? Seguin. Yeah, he went to Seguin. It was a quarterback over there. So props to him. So yes, that ends up being the other battle.
You know, it's interesting, Anwar. I feel like most of the guys that got drafted landed up in pretty good places. I mean, I read Peter King was talking about Sam Cosmi this morning as potentially Washington's left tackle for the next half decade. And when that pick was made, I can't say I know enough about Washington's roster to have known that. But for Peter King and a list of things that stood out to him from the draft to say they may have gotten their left tackle with this pick made me think somebody from the organization told him that. And so, okay, good for you, Cosmi. Like, that's good. Joseph Ossai, it sounds like the Bengals have a very specific need in place for him on this roster as a day one contributor. Good for Joseph Ossai. Taquan Graham comes into a position where, from what I've read on Falcons websites about it, they view him as a guy that can be a backup at the 3 and 5 technique. And there's unless he sucks and comes in completely unready to play and just isn't an NFL player, he's not even really competing for a spot. There seems to be a sense that this is his spot. And then if he didn't take it by the horns, no pun intended, that then that would have been a failure. But it doesn't even sound like he's in a position where he can make the team pretty easily and have a role this season. Again, if we talked about this in December and January and been like, look, you're going to get drafted by a team that views you as they draft you as a primary backup at a 3 and the 5, and the expectation will be that you have to play this year, I'm sure Taquan Graham would be like, bet, yes, that sounds ideal. I'm not going to come in and say I can start right away, but yeah, I can come in and be a backup at 2 spots and show my versatility and get on the field. Like, that's kind of how the Texans used Charles Ehlinger when he was drafted, right? Like, come in ready to play, and you're going to get playing time and situational pass rushing opportunities that give you a chance to prove that you can stay in the league. And I feel like that's exactly what Charles Ehlinger did. And I believe Taquan Graham enters the league in a similar situation. That's a huge win for him. Like, I find myself really happy for Taquan Graham because I don't think 12 months ago we would have said on draft day in 2021, you and I'll do a YouTube show where we talk about Taquan Graham has seemingly a roster spot baked in for him coming out of the draft. And, oh, by the way, his signing bonus will be bigger than Sam Ehlinger's, right? Like, we just weren't.
Yeah.
That was just not a prism that we viewed him through. Really cool to see that happened for him. It was a great moment.
Yeah, it was, for me, he was a guy that, when we talked about it last week, I was like day 3 to undrafted. Like, I just felt like that's where he fell in at some point. And he was a guy that, Catch, the fascinating thing about defensive linemen when they kind of go after them, sometimes you see them, and some of these defensive linemen, they don't dominate, and like we think you're a defensive lineman do, but they do enough little things where guys see it on tape and they're like, okay, this is what we need. Like, we're not expecting you to dominate on every single play, but we don't need you to be Aaron Donald. We don't need you to be the next Warren Sapp. Just be good enough as this. And those guys end up being good enough like this and getting drafted. Poona Ford, that guy got paid, right? You're like, holy shit, Poona Ford got paid. By the way, at some point, is it about time to give Oscar Giles some damn respect? Oscar Giles has been put. I don't know if Oscar Giles has a job right now, but Oscar Giles put some guys in the league, man.
Yeah, man. The issue with Oscar was never like, is he a good coach? Like, Oscar's a good coach, and you could justify, I think, having him almost on any staff in the country. The question with Oscar is always, is he a dynamic recruiter? And sometimes that matters more than quality coaching. It shouldn't, but it does a lot of times. And he's a guy that every year he was ever at Texas, you'd look up and he'd have guys he was putting into the league. You never really thought of him as an impact recruiter. And that's how guys get to stay at big time jobs for a really long time, is the latter and not necessarily the former.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you looking at Bill here? I was like the Ossai and Perkins both going in the third round, completely shocking to me. It speaks, I think, sometimes the depth. You know what I mean? The thing is, I watched guys get drafted in front of both Perkins and Joseph Ossai, and they were better players than Ossai and Perkins were. Both of those guys' inconsistency. Joseph Ossai was more inconsistent than Texas fans want to acknowledge. And they don't want to look at it and think about, well, outside, there are 2 ways to look at how the season that he had a year ago. But if you take that monstrous Oklahoma State game out of the equation, you're talking about a guy that got to the quarterback last time 3 times. 3 times. And if I'm an NFL team and it's like, man, he's a little bit of a one-trick pony as a pass rusher. And he is, because he just got to that position. This isn't a guy that was in that pass rushing edge defensive end position for 3 or 4 years and then is going into the league. This is a guy that's made position changes and really just went into that position a year ago. So he is a little bit of a one-trick pony. And a year ago at the Big 12 level, that one trick wasn't enough for him to get to the quarterback, even at a level of a guy like Joseph or Charles Ehlinger, who was never viewed as an elite pass rusher. He was just a good pass rusher. And Ossai going in the 3rd round, I think, doesn't speak about his athletic gifts, because I think everybody realizes he has those in an abundance. But there's a level of consistency in his play that he has to bring to the table before he's going to be a player that an NFL team can lean on, play in and play out. And Anwar, one of the real, I don't want to say fascinating because I use that word too much, but I don't want to say interesting because that's the word I use instead of interesting. I use fascinating. So I just got curious. One of the things that's curious about this weekend is it feels like Sam kind of admits in the pre-draft process, I've got to retrain. I'm changing my body around a little bit and I've got to make throws better. And I know that there are some things I need to work on. Caden Stern is like, I need to tackle better. Joseph Ossai's I got to learn more pass rush moves and not be a one-trick pony. We're not really talking about Taquan Graham in this fashion or even Sam Cosmi, but it is interesting to me, the number of guys. We haven't even talked about Brennan Eagles yet, which I'm sure you will segue us into at some point. Too many guys, even off of a very good team or a pretty good team from a year ago, going to the NFL draft process talking about, I know I need to be better at these basics in a way, basics of the position. I don't know. Thoughts on that in general, that off the top of my head, I can think of 3 guys that entered the NFL draft process openly admitting, yeah, there's some things I don't do well enough. I mean, it blows my mind that Caden Stern said in a pre-draft interview, I don't tackle well enough.
Well, he ain't lying. I mean, at least he's honest. I mean, there's, and you know what? But here's the thing: when you go through the pre-draft process,
that guy needs a YouTube channel.
But when you go through the pre-draft process, they tell you what you don't do well. See, here in college, they tell you all the things that you do right, and so it coach you up. I'm not saying they don't coach you up, but they coach you to a point. Because at some point you're just better than everyone else. So there's a lot of things that go to slide. But when you go through the pre-draft stuff, your agent is talking to teams, and teams are telling you, we like him, but he doesn't do this well. You go to an interview with teams, they'll pull it up and they'll show you, you know what? You didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. We like you, but here's the stuff you didn't do. These are our concerns about you. We'll see what happens. It's not like recruiting. Right? In recruiting, high school recruiting, Catch, they don't tell you what you do wrong. They tell you all the things that you do right. But when you get to the NFL, they tell you all the things that you do wrong. So at that point, when you go through the process for months, and then
you've just been humbled.
You've been humbled. And then you see yourself slipping down further than what you thought you would be. Because segue, you see yourself slipping down because you thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be this. And then you see guys getting drafted. And I'm better than him. I'm better than him. That's the thing. So then they enter and they're like, yeah, man, I guess I got to become more accurate. Yeah, I guess I got to become a better tackler. Shit, I'm a 5th round pick. I'm a 6th round pick. I guess everyone's right. Then the reality kind of slaps you in the face.
Speaking of which, we're going to have the Brennan Eagles conversation now. I mean,
now let's do it.
You know, my thing with Brennan is that I think he came in with a Bijan mentality. And I promise you, I mean, I would imagine that Bijan views himself as a potential 3-year. He was on a 3-year plan. You see this, every recruit says this. They're like, I'm here to announce it for the next 3 to 4 years. Sometimes they just say 3.
They say 3, but I'm taking my talents too, which I hate. But I've always hated announcements. Can I tell you that? I've always hated the hat trick. I've always hated 3 hats, which one I'm going to pick up, right? I've hated it. I've hated the shirt after shirt after shirt. This is my real school. I just wish I'm okay with the person who reaches into the bag and pulls it out and put it on. But the hat trick, I'm going to go here, psych! I hate all that stuff. There's the guy who announced jumping out of a plane. I thought that was pretty original.
I think if it was me, and I think this would be the case even if I was in high school, I would have been like, what's the classiest way to do this? I remember going to watch Corey Redding I thought Corey Redding back in the day in January of 1999, they had a podium. The whole school was there, and he sat at a podium, and there weren't any hats or anything. And he came dressed real nicely, and they presented flowers to his mom. And then he just said, I decided I'm going to the University of Texas. And that was it. Yeah. And he didn't kick Colorado's coaches in the nuts with a fake hat put on. I just don't know why enough guys don't. Because you know what? 20 years later, I still remember how classy it was. Yeah. I don't know why more guys just don't go, no gimmicks. Make it as I want to be I see myself as an NFL brand in 4 to 5 years. What represents that?
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're going to be here the next 3 to 4 years. Show me.
Sure.
And I think about a guy like Marvin Wilson. I had no idea what happened to Marvin Wilson, right? I knew that last year I was reading that Marvin Wilson from Florida State, the former 5-star player who Texas wanted so dearly and who didn't go there. And he was a captain of the team. He was second team all ACC. There was talk that he could have come out last year and been a second day pick, would have been a second day pick, but he came back to be a first round pick. Then he doesn't get drafted. And I'm like, how the hell does that happen? So I just did some reading, and it was oh, okay, well, he didn't play well last year. He played in 6 games and they weren't good. It was a step backwards. So it's okay, step backwards on the field. Showed up at his pro day overweight and tested poorly.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, wait a minute. He had a bad year and then came in and had a bad pro day? How does that happen? And then it was oh, yeah, he called his coach a liar in public before the season last year. Oh, that is hitting for the cycle in things that can turn off an NFL football coach. And that's how Marvin Wilson can fall from a day 2 pick to not picked at all. And going back to that original conversation of Brennan Eagles, I think Brennan Eagles came in with a 3-year plan. And I think you got to be willing to adjust your plan. And I don't think Brennan Eagles was enjoying college a lot. I think he's ready to get to the NFL. So maybe today he's happy with just not being in college and having to fake it. But he felt like a guy that was going to be a late round pick at best. He needed another year. And to see that guy who had borderline 5-star talent put himself, I think, in a losing position, and to come out of the draft weekend as an undrafted free agent when he didn't have to be. This wasn't him getting forced into the NFL. He ran out of time. This was just a guy that decided he'd had enough of college football, the University of Texas, whatever. Maybe it was the eyes of Texas. There was a lot. I don't know. I don't know what all was going through Brennan Eagles' head that would make him want to bail, but he bailed. And the NFL told him this weekend that he's not ready. And I think your point on Orangebloods this weekend, we just posted some hot takes kind of stuff from the staff on the draft, and Anwar pointed out that guys should be able to go back. That don't hire an agent, and if you don't get drafted, it leaves you a chance to come back. I don't know what happens with Brennan Eagles now. It feels like making the Cowboys as a receiver this year is a tall task. They're deep there.
Yes.
They're already having conversations about being so deep there that they're just going to have to let guys walk. I guess the good news is the NFL has like 97 guys on the practice squad now. Mm-hmm. So if you're Brennan and you come in and you open enough eyes that you make the practice squad, at least now you're making six figures, and there's a pathway under NFL eyes, I suppose, to spend a year shaping your skills. And at which point, worse things have happened to people. But, it's hard coming out of this weekend and viewing his situation through an optimistic lens, Anwar. And it just didn't have to happen that way.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, one of the things I told you last week, I said Brennan Eagles' agent is represented by Ezekiel Elliott. And I said, I said something about he may need a favor. And I think a favor was called in. Like, I think this is a strict favor because it's no coincidence that he went to the Cowboys. Yeah. There's no coincidence there of all the powerful whatevers. Like, yeah, hey, man, do me a solid. Can you sign my guy? Sure, we'll sign your guy. Not a problem. But to your point, it goes into a tough ass situation. And there was nothing on Brennan's resume that suggested he was going to get drafted. There just wasn't. And what college guys don't realize is that there's a couple of things, but college guys don't realize is that however great you thought you were in high school and however good you think you were in college, you get to that league, everybody is good and probably better than you. That's just facts. Okay. You're not going to walk in and be better than the majority of people on day one. You're just not. Most guys who even are first round picks have to sit for a little bit because they're not ready. And so you come in as a receiver and yeah, you're tired of school. You don't want to be here, so on and so forth. But this is the same argument that I had a couple of years ago with Lil Jordan Humphrey. And people would argue back and forth with me. Well, he's not going to get faster. Well, maybe he could. I mean, maybe if he spent the year saying, like, I could get faster, because when you enter the league undrafted, you are at the bottom of the freaking barrel, man. You're an afterthought. And for every little success story that you can give me about one guy who was an undrafted free agent and went on to be an NFL Pro Bowler, there's thousands of people who that just never happened to. Like, it's like playing the lotto. So, it ends up being a tale that I'm sure for Brendan, he's like, okay, I'm in Dallas. Let me see what happens. He'll go there and see if he can work hard. But when you're on the outside looking in, people say that, they love to say, Ketch, listen, man, if you're a 6th rounder or 7th rounder, then you just might as well not just get drafted. Just be an undrafted free agent and get to choose your wherever you want to go. Well, there's still something to be said for being drafted, even in the 6th round.
You know who says that? People that don't get drafted.
Yes.
Did you see Sam and his family this weekend? Did they look like they would have rather have been undrafted?
No, they didn't. It was like, shit, the Colts called. I was hoping to be undrafted and go somewhere else.
Hang up. Maybe they won't draft you if you don't answer the phone. Cuss him out, Sam.
You think Shane Buechele would have traded places with Sam on Saturday?
Exactly. So
he would have. So I don't know what happens with Brendan. I think it's a tough situation. I do wish, though, the point that I did make, I do wish, though, like college basketball, if guys want to come out, then allow them the opportunity to come out. But you can't sign with an agent. And if you get drafted, you're there. That's just It is what it is. But allow them at least the opportunity to potentially come back. as opposed to now you're stuck. You've got to make it work. You've got no college diploma. And if it doesn't work out in this league, then screw you. You made a bad decision.
Baseball guys get to see where they're drafted before they come out. It is there's a whole lot about college football that's a one-way highway.
Yeah.
Changing the rules would only help. I mean, even if Texas was like, we don't have room for you, we filled your scholarship, we didn't save it for you. Brennan Eagles can still go somewhere else and play. I can tell you what happens to Brennan Eagles next. You want to hear?
Yes.
Either he approaches the next 5 months like they're the most important months of his life, unless he is so all in every way that a person can be committed to something. Unless he's that committed, he'll be in and out of the league in less than 12 months. And he'll just be one of them guys that people always talk about could have been something if only. And I'm like president of the Brennan Eagles fan club. I want him. You and I would watch games last year, and if Eagles made a play, it'd be like, oh, there's a feather in my cap against Anwar in this Caden Stearns versus Brennan Eagles Hill that we both decided to die on last year.
I think I kind of win technically, though.
You do.
Yeah, okay.
And I, as Mr. NFL draft data point guy himself, I can, and you know what? Brennan made more plays. You know, you know what I mean? Because DBs wasn't like Caden. He wasn't scoring touchdowns, and he didn't have a bunch of interceptions. And frankly, Caden just didn't play very well last year. But the end result is he got drafted, and Brennan Eagles didn't. And Brennan Eagles, all these dudes have to grow up. But boy, I mean, you and I have covered NFL training camps. The undrafted free agents, that is a level of hell.
Oh, man.
Because you think Brennan Eagles didn't like getting taken out of the games at Texas? you think that he thought that he should have had more leverage and it should have been better used? Wait till you're the 8th guy in line.
Yes.
And you get 1 rep.
Yes.
And if you don't do it on your 1 rep in 20 minutes, that's it. You didn't do it that day.
Done.
Your goal is to get 2 reps. And then when you get 2, you get 3. And you have to grind like you're Rudy to make it happen. And most of these dudes aren't wired that way, man.
By the way, you got to make it out of rookie mini camp, because you go in as an undrafted free agent, Catch.
Yep.
And if they see someone else that they invited who they feel like is better than you, you're done.
It happens to quarterbacks, it seems like, more than anything else. They're the ones that have to do the tryouts. Like, it's good for him that he didn't have to do what Chris Brown may have to do, which is go to an undrafted free agent tryout to try to get yourself into a roster spot on the 80. Like, it's just tough sledding. And I think Brennan Eagles has the talent to play in the NFL for a long time. But the statistics tell you the overwhelming majority of the guys that go undrafted do not. And one of the reasons a lot of guys often don't get drafted is up here in the head: commitment, passion, focus. These are all things that Brennan Eagles, all of these guys will have to do. It's just different. And you've got no financial security. I mean, you know, he probably got like 10 to 20 grand, probably like 10 to 15 signing bonus to sign. So he gets to keep about half that. So he can pay for like an apartment. Maybe
because he's got to pay out. He's got to pay out.
Oh, his agent. Oh, yeah. His agent got all his money back. That's why his agent had to get him into camp.
Yes. Yeah. So he can get his money back.
Yes.
Correct.
Even if only like $5,000 worth of travel and work out, he gonna get that 5 back. He's like, hey, let me get right here. Just give him the bonus. You can cut him in a month. I just need to get my money back.
Correct. And so for the agents, and this, I'm not saying, but for a lot of agents, it's just a crapshoot. Because look, if you if I invest, to your point, if I invest this 10, 15,000, 20,000 in you, but listen, you got to pay for a trainer. You guys pay for a speed guy, wherever if he's down in Miami, housing, all that type of stuff. So yes, if he lands, great. I just got that thing at a discount price. It's not like giving a first round guy. You got to give him 100 G's.
When these dudes go to LA and they're working out with pro trainers for the draft, like that is not their money.
They have to pay that back. They have to pay that back.
I don't mean to laugh at Brennan Eagles' situation. I'm just thinking about undrafted guys in general. Yes. That agent becomes like the Duke brothers in Trading Places. Like, just get in there and sell so I don't lose everything. And yeah, I mean, the reality is that Brennan Eagles probably is at 0 right now.
Correct.
And it's a hell of a thing to be 21 years old and that to be the best version of yourself that you're ever going to be in your life ever. He's got to do that now because he may never get it back. There may not ever be a second training camp. He has to realize he's auditioning for the rest of his life right now. And typically, NFL teams love that shit, Anwar.
Yes.
They don't mind if a guy struggles. I mean, they do. If you struggle, you don't make the team. But they at least connect. You can see it in like the Hard Knock videos. Like coaches love guys who are the first in and the last to leave. And it doesn't mean that they always make the roster. But boy, at least you can get a guy to fight for you. At least you can get a guy that'll look out for you. And at least you can get a guy who's like in the fourth quarter of preseason games, I'm going to get my dude out there to get some game film in so that somebody can see him. You know who doesn't get game film in preseason games in the fourth quarter? Dudes that think they know more than the position coach. And the position coach is like, you can just stay over there. You can stay over there. Hold your helmet. Hold your helmet and stand on the sideline. That's who you are. Mm-hmm. And Brennan can't be that dude, man. And I only say that because Brennan wrongfully thought of himself as a 3-year guy that had to go pro because by God, he was going to be an NFL wide receiver. And that's what the best do. It is what the best do. Not having enough self-awareness to realize that you don't fall into that category can be famous last words. And now I'll be rooting for Brennan Eagles. I just realized what a very tall hill he has to climb. And if he doesn't realize that, like I bet Chris Brown realized it. I bet Chris Brown right now is like, I might not ever play football again. I just want to get on a team. He's already scared. Like how scared Brennan Eagles needs to be scared. And my overall feeling on most of these dudes that get signed as undrafted free agents, they think that's making the team. And they don't realize till August how much it's not.
I forgot about Chris Brown. Did he not get signed by anybody?
No.
Ooh. Well, that's a bad that by the way is a bad sign. Because if you don't get signed within the first hour of the draft, when the draft is over, you are beyond on the outside looking in. Now
that was the good thing about Brennan is his thing happened fast, and I was like, okay, that means the Cowboys probably made him a priority free agent, which doesn't have nearly as much value and cachet as it sounds. He was a priority free agent. That means he probably got his $10,000 signing bonus. That's what that means. But it doesn't really mean, although, Marvin Wilson got I want to say they gave him 30 with 200 guaranteed. That's a real priority free agent. They start guaranteeing some money. But man, Chris Brown, as of this morning, hasn't signed on anywhere. And, that's tough, man. Because I would say Chris Brown was better than Caden Stearns last year. To me, Chris Brown is a bottom of the roster NFL player. I'm a little shocked that he, at this point, doesn't have that opportunity to prove that locked in.
It is a really interesting thing about the Chris Brown situation. And Look, I mean, at this point, he's going through the draft process, and so what he'll get at this point, he'll get a rookie invite. So we'll see something probably over the next couple of days, and people are going to think, "Oh, Chris Brown signed with such and such." It's an invite to rookie minicamp, because here's the thing: they draft 7 guys for a team, but to have rookie minicamp, you still need another freaking like 80 guys to fill it out. So this is when everybody's going to get an invite, and this is where everyone's going to hope that they can just flash in the pan and show something. And sometimes it happens. So every once in a while, some guy shows out, and all of a sudden it works out for them. The overwhelming majority of the times, you get a T-shirt. You get a souvenir T-shirt that you get to take home that said you were with the Chiefs for a couple of days, a nice little T-shirt, or I mean, they don't say like I tried out for the Chiefs, but you know what I mean. Like you get to keep it,
yeah.
And really, then you really get to start about your day and really get your career started. And that if you're not drafted, you really got to start thinking about what's Plan B. What's Plan B here?
Any other draft thoughts from today? I'm good, man. Like,
I mean, we talk a lot, so
you get your money's worth in our YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, all I'll say draft thoughts is, look, thank you guys for helping us get to 1,000 subscribers. So we got that in a little over a week. So want to thank you for watching, supporting. The numbers are going really great for our videos. So we got a lot of things in the works. So just stay tuned, because if you think you've seen a little bit, you haven't seen nothing yet, because we've got a lot of good content coming in the near future.
You know, as a guy that did radio for 10 years, I definitely love this venue. Like, we just did a 3-hour radio show. We just did it in an hour, and no like commercials no 6-minute breaks. I like it. For myself and Anwar, we'll have more videos all week long. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. We just want you to be with us forever. Although that sounds a little too Fatal Attractionist. Hit the like button at the very least, and we'll do this again tomorrow. Later.